topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
With Light Up Your Life, and hope you all are having a good Friday and a good week. And here we are, almost approaching a whole new month of March coming up shortly, and time is flying. And I am really excited about today's conversation. I know I say this about all of them, but this one especially, because for a variety of reasons. I think that oftentimes we get stuck in a cyclical cycle when we talk about the journey of weight loss and keeping it off. And I just know the struggle is real for so many. And I actually appreciate today's guest because they are a male. And I think a male talking about weight loss, to me, holds a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a really... I think the more conversation we have with both genders about weight loss and what it feels like to be a male also in this weight loss journey, and what it means, like what is that emotional toll that it takes upon us, and we're going to be discussing that today with our speaker. And I really don't know that many people who haven't struggled with weight loss. I think of my own clients. I think of my own journey. I think about my family and my friends, and I'm not quite sure. I'm convinced that I don't know anyone who's never struggled with it, right? And especially at different parts of their timeline. So I just think this is such a fitting conversation. And I also think we have to realize that it's never one size fits all, literally, right? Like we are always trying to compartmentalize things and put things into perfect little containers. And when we talk to our speaker today, I think we'll realize just how much of our American society has compartmentalized weight loss and tried to make it fit in this perfectly packaged present, and it's just not. And so really excited. So our speaker today, our guest speaker, his name is Brian Harner, and he has written this really wonderful book, and we'll be talking a lot about this. It's called Diet Rebel, and actually the title of our show today is called Becoming a Diet Rebel. I just think this is such an awesome title. I now have decided that I have been on very many plans. When I was reading through Brian's book, I was like, gosh, I've done this, and this too. And you just know that someone who's literally tried different methodologies and different programs, and then they're going to tell you that, guess what? There are other ways around this diet plan, which is just this yo-yo constant back and forth. So really excited about how he'll engage us in this conversation about why these diets don't work and why we need to be a rebel and start a whole different approach. Also, what I love about this book is, as you all know, as a coach and as someone who believes in mental health so much as part of our wellness, that nothing can be made without not bringing up psychology of anything, right? Our human behavior and why we do the things we do. So Brian discusses that emotional connection to food and how it is a problem in our society on how we do actually self-medicate with food. For those of you who don't know the DSM-5, which is Diagnostic Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, food addiction is one of those components that comes under addictive behavior. And I remember in grad school, one of my presentations, we spent a lot of time looking at food addiction and why what are cravings and urges and all of that. So I just think today's conversation, I think it will hit a lot of people, because the struggle's real, right? This obesity rate in this country is at a sky high, astronomical rates, which affects our health in so many ways. And Brian discusses all of the numbers in terms of recent research. And so I just think it's a really important time. So besides being an author, he is a certified weight loss specialist and a certified running coach, which I'm really excited because I've actually never heard of one. I really am excited about hearing about that role as well. And Brian will share his personal journey of how he has kept the weight off for decades at this point. And so there's nothing better than personal stories, as we well know on this show and in life, to really inspire us. So without me babbling further, Brian, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Artie. I'm happy to be here. And that was a great introduction. I mean, I love everything you said.
Thank you. Well, I was happy to introduce you because I really, I love this topic so much for a variety of reasons. I think we don't talk about it enough because it is so personal, right? So personal. We don't want to talk about what the numbers are on the scale. We don't want to talk about how we've sucked at everything we've done and it's still not working, and how each decade looks different and how we change and goodbye. So I'm really thinking that this is such a great time and a great time for this conversation because your numbers prove it. Like,
yes. I mean, it's staggering, right? 70%, over 70% of our society here in America is overweight. And unfortunately, it's about 42% obesity. And those are pre-COVID numbers. I'm sure it's a lot worse now. I mean, those were, going off the top of my head, I don't have all this memorized, but I believe it was from 2018 were the statistics I included in the book, which is what I just stated. But I'm sure with the last 2 years, they've gotten even more out of whack.
Yes. So it's just the most perfect time for this conversation. In addition, Brian, I'm sure you feel like a lot of my clients and their goals recently have been to physically be engaged in moving again. I mean, a majority of the clients I'm seeing, their short-term goal is like, I really just, I need to lose this weight,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the struggle. I mean, the struggle is real. And it's like, people meet me now, like as I say in the book, I struggled with weight for almost 30 some years, between 8 and 35 ish, was my struggle with food and with weight, just constantly up and down. And I wasn't a naturally overweight person. I have a small to medium sized frame, so I'm tall, but I'm not huge, naturally speaking. But, my habits and my, using food to fill in voids in my life, that was the big thing. And eventually, you mentioned mental health. Eventually, I actually became clinically depressed, and it wasn't, and how I literally fed the depression was with food, right? I kept trying to self-medicate with food and alcohol. I mean, I drank beer, but it was mostly food. And but it wasn't until I said, look, I'm going to kill myself. I'm 270 pounds. I have no energy. I'm 30, I was 31 at the time. And, I want a family. I want to be around for my family. I want to have energy for kids. And, it was time to do something about it.
You use the word rock bottom, and I really appreciate you using that in the book too, because everybody has a rock bottom. So would you say that was yours?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I literally, one Saturday morning, was in bed and I'm like, I can't get out of bed. I mean, I wasn't like 600 pounds or anything that I physically couldn't get out of bed. It's just like, I don't have the energy. I'm spent. And that was part of the decision. I mean, that was a big part of the decision to start losing weight. But during that time period, I mentioned this in the book also, that from the time I graduated college, which I was pretty thin when I was in a thin phase because everything was a roller coaster for all these years, right? I was in a thin phase, but that was my last thin phase for about 10 years. And after I graduated college, I literally gained about 10 pounds a year for the next 9 or 10 years. And now it wasn't a linear thing, right? I would go on a diet, lose a few pounds, go off the diet, gain a few pounds. And this is where I realized what I call in the book the diet tyranny cycle. And that simply is you make a decision to lose weight, you pick a diet, stick with it for a little while, lose some weight, get tired of white knuckling the whole diet thing, or get tired of the restrictive food or whatever the rules are of the diet. So that slowly fades away. You start gaining, or you realize you're gaining weight again, and you get depressed. And then eventually that fades and you start that whole cycle over again. And I did that for nearly 10 years. And all that resulted in was gaining weight. At the end of the day, I literally went from 170 pounds to 270 pounds in those 10 years. So it wasn't until I made a decision for my health, for my depression to get better. And interestingly enough, I didn't set, at that time, I didn't set a goal to lose weight. I had those goals before, and I was like, this isn't working. I need something different. I need something that's going to motivate me. I figured out, that I really wanted to lose weight and why I wanted to lose weight, which is number one. I asked myself why I overeat. And at that time, I was overeating because I was depressed. I hated my job. And it snowballs, right? You don't have energy to exercise or do fun things. So what do? Fun things is eating, right? So my activities were surrounded with eating. Even my fun, even my entertainment was, surrounded by eating, going out to eat, going out with friends, going out to happy hour, that type of thing. But it wasn't until, first of all, I made the decision of, I answered the question, why? Answer the question, why am I overeating? And again, depression, comfort, all that stuff. But then I asked myself another question, and that question was, where do I want to go, right? And instead of just coming up with a generic answer, I want to lose weight, which is what I did in the past, I made a bold statement. And I remember sitting at dinner with my wife. I had this big plate of nachos in front of me and a pitcher of beer, and that was just for me, right? I mean, we weren't sharing the nachos as an appetizer. That was my dinner. And I blurted out that I'm going to run a marathon. And she almost cracked up laughing, because at that time I couldn't even run across the street without it being a near fatal event, right? So I made that goal of running a marathon, which I eventually did. It took me a while because I didn't know how to become a marathoner or train for running marathons. But it was that goal. It was those two things in combination that I answered the question why I was overeating and what I wanted to accomplish, where I wanted to go. And, the marathon was a hard goal, but my real destination, right, was I wanted to have energy. I wanted to be healthy. I was fast approaching pre-diabetes. I had high blood pressure. I mean, I'm only 31 years old at the time. My health was sinking, and I didn't want to die. So I made this answer the question about the destination being a marathon. And then once I focused on that, instead of focusing on weight, I could lose weight a lot better, a lot easier.
Ain't that, it's so the truth. When we make the problem about the problem,
Right.
In this instance, we'll say it's the weight.
Right.
Hyper focus on the problem. But when we rename things, like recently I've just realized when we either redefine things or give words different meaning, we literally can change. It's all about how we view things, right? So
Exactly.
that hyper focus on the weight doesn't do anyone any justice. It doesn't even do it justice, actually, to be honest with you, I feel. You become we become hyper fixated on it. You just work on, then you become, that's like you said, that cyclical cycle. You pay attention to the numbers. You don't really, and it's a journey. and then you're trying to get to that destination, and in the meantime you're miserable. So then what
Right.
happens? You just can't get off that hamster wheel at this point.
Right. And diets make it worse, because you said focus on the problem, right? Well, that's all traditional dieting is. It's focused on the problem. It's focused on losing weight and constantly reminding losing weight, right? And I don't know anybody. Now, if you only have 5 pounds or 10 pounds to lose to get in shape for, summer beach season, right, or whatever, diets are great. They work. But if you are a chronic overeater like I was, that has this constant problem of weight, diets aren't going to work for you. They're just not. I don't know one person that could go on a traditional diet. They're too restrictive. I mean, I don't I don't promote this really, but at that time I wasn't health conscious in the sense of, eating well, right? But I literally lost weight by eating Big Macs and Kentucky Fried Chicken and still drinking some beer and eating wings. I wasn't focused on necessarily health. I was focused on, at the beginning, I was focused on starting to run, right? But I wasn't focused on my diet. Eventually, then that morphed into becoming a more serious runner. And I changed my diet, changed my habits, changed my diets as my running goals became more and more advanced, right? Because once I ran my 5K, I wanted to run a faster 5K, right? Once I ran a 10K, I wanted to run a faster 10K. Once I ran a half marathon, I wanted to run a faster half marathon. My ultimate goal was always running a marathon, right? Then once I ran a marathon, I wanted to run a faster one, and then a faster one, and then a faster one, right? And there's only so much you can do when your primary diet is fast food, right? But my point right now in this conversation is you can literally eat nothing but Snickers bars and Big Macs and still lose weight. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I don't advise that.
I know that.
Of course. But this is what people focus on way too much. They focus on, again, going back to focusing on the problem. The problem isn't necessarily even what we eat. It's our habits. How much do we eat? How much do we exercise? Because here's the thing, and maybe I'm giving away too much information today, but there's a secret to weight loss. There really is. Unless you have some weird disease. I mean, there are some diseases out there like Cushing's syndrome and that allow you not to lose weight, or you have a messed up metabolism because of something going on biochemically in your body, and those folks need to work with physicians to rectify those situations. But for a normal, average, healthy person, relatively healthy, otherwise healthy person, other than problems the weight causes, of course, regular metabolisms, the secret to weight loss is simply burn off more calories than you take in. Period. There is nothing else. And if you're doing that, I mean, that's all it takes. Now, diets theoretically are just a way to do that, right? But the problem with diets is most diets make you make too much radical. In my opinion, the problem with diets are too many of them make you make too much radical change at once, right? Like Atkins diet, got to cut out all carbs, right? Well, if you just go from eating like 75% of your diet carbs to eating no carbs, you're actually going to be sick for a while.
Yep.
And as a runner, I couldn't cut out carbs, right? Now, what I did do was I changed from eating the Snickers bars and the simple sugar, the carbs from simple sugars and simple carbs to complex carbs, and that allows our body to do a whole bunch of different things, biomechanically and metabolism wise, because obviously complex carbs are digested and processed in a different way than the simple carbs, than the simple sugars. And for a runner, the carbs are important, because if I was going for, let's say, a run at lunchtime, I would eat a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, let's say, that would give me energy at the right time then to do my run, because those complex carbs were being broken down over time instead of just going right to the energy we needed at the time. And if we don't need that energy at time, then it turns into fat. The excess calories and sugar turns into fat. But again, going back to the basics, I mean, it's basically, I mean, it's no simpler than burn off more than you take in. And we lose then we lose that, I think, in the traditional dieting world, because it seems like there's more magic to it than that, right? And we got to boil it down. And in the book, I actually have a formula for people to use to calculate their caloric needs for the day. And I mean, it boils down, and here's again the simple mathematics. I'm a data guy. I'm a math guy, computer scientist by education and trade. I was a computer programmer for many years, so I always think in terms of data and, you know, hard facts, concrete facts that I can prove, right? So I came up with the Diet Rebel formula, which is a simple calculation on. Now there's a little trial and error in here, because like my metabolism isn't the same as your metabolism, right? So if I burn off 100 calories per mile running, you might only burn off 80, or you might burn off 110, right? So there's a little trial and error involved here. But the basic math of the situation is every pound is 3,500 calories, right? So if you want to gain a pound, you eat 3,500 calories more than you burn off, right? During whatever time period. If you want to lose a pound, you have to cut calories. You don't have to cut calories. That's a misnomer. You have to burn 3,500 calories more than you took in, right? So you could literally lose weight without cutting your eating at all, as long as you're not overeating, right? And I mean, and I talk about this all in more detail in the book, but I mean, again, if you want to lose a pound a week, which was a subsequent goal of mine, was to lose a pound a week. And to do that, you eat 3,500 less calories. You consume 3,500 less calories than you burn off for that given week. And when you break it down, divide 3,500 by 7, that's 500 calories a day, right? So for me, if I'm at 260 pounds and I want to lose 500 pound a week, and I don't want to do any exercise at all, right? I roughly have to eat 2,100 calories a day. And that should get me to the point where I'm losing a pound a week without doing anything.
It is basic math, actually, Brian, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we are scientific creatures. There has to be some math involved to us, right? I mean,
and I break it down in the book. It's hard to do it here in a conversation, but I break it all down in the book. I simplify it a little bit more than maybe I'm doing now, but there's step by step in the book. There's step by step what to do and how to do it. But it's really simple, but it's not easy. And
I'm glad you're saying. So here's the thing. It's for longevity, right? So it's like anything you do for longevity and habit formation, it's not easy in the beginning, right? Those first 30 days, 60 days, you have withdrawal symptoms. I mean, we just talked about food being the same addiction as drugs, sex, or like they're all in the same hole. They let that dopamine receptor, right? That whole system. They're all in the same part, that it's really hard to break an addiction. It's going to take work, and it's going to take energy.
Man, I wish more in society would agree and promote the addiction part of food. And what mind boggles me, especially, and I won't get into anything controversial, but right now with what's going on with COVID and how passionate people are about COVID, right? I don't get why the powers that be, if you will, aren't as passionate about the weight problem. Because even with COVID, I mean, again, I don't want to get into too much controversial. This is all facts, and what I'm about to say is from the CDC. But the CDC has published on their website that 80% of hospitalizations due to COVID are overweight people. And it's like, it's mind-boggling that we, are talking about other things other than weight, even with regard to COVID. But I don't want to make this a COVID discussion.
Totally. But Brian, you're 100% right, because I always bring that statistic up to, I always say, and I also do the same. I say, can we please take a look at when we are evaluating what people are coming and presenting for? And we are finding, right? What does pre-diabetes mean? What does that term mean? It is because your BMI index is literally on the board, or if it's already gone in the overweight category. So that's the first piece of education I think people need to realize. When your
Right.
doctor's using pre-diabetic, it is like you're in that yellow red zone, right? Where we're
Right.
approaching it
Right.
fast. But they can't come out and tell you you're obese, you're fat. Like, I mean, I'm
I,
just
you know, and I don't believe in shaming. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong. We should never shame anybody for really anything, because that doesn't solve anything. Nobody's going to change if we try to shame them into it. Again, in society, we're kind of seeing that right now, right? But you know, I don't understand what it is about food and being overweight that we glamorize so much, because it's literally killing us. It's dragging down our healthcare system. I mean, it's expensive with healthcare, our healthcare system. It's killing people slowly, but it's killing people. But it's like we promote dad bods. You mentioned earlier about from a male perspective, right? So many people, especially in their 30s. I was in the 30s when I started this and came to this revelation, right? But so many people today, the whole dad bod craze, it's like you wear it as a badge of honor instead of going, hey, I'm getting unhealthy. You know, this is hurting me. This is dad bod. Yeah, but I might not be a dad for that longer. Because I'll tell you a story. Last summer, now I don't know if this was COVID related or not, because I know he had COVID early in the summer. So this could be COVID related. But again, the overweight thing in conjunction with COVID makes COVID worse for a lot of people. But my son plays flag football. I have a son. He's almost 9. He's 8 years old, and I coach. I'm assistant coach on the team. Well, we were on a new team with a new coach, and I loved this coach. He was a great football coach, great with the kids. We had a few practices. We had 3 weeks of practices leading up to the season. We played our first game. We won our first game. We blew them out, right? Monday, I got a call from the head of the league, because I'm the assistant coach, saying that our coach died suddenly of a heart attack. 38 years old, but I don't know how to put this politely. He was really, 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 really obese. He was working on that. And apparently, like, I just met him about a month before he died, so I don't know any history, but I was told that he was really working on it. He had dropped a lot of weight already. But it's again, with these COVID, everybody's talking about needless deaths and stuff, you know, but I'm talking about, look at all the needless deaths that being overweight has caused. And, you know, again, I'm not shaming anybody, but when I look at that, I see a wife and 2 sons now that don't have their father. He's 38 years old. I don't know if I mentioned that.
You did.
And had 2 young children on the team. And it's like, you know, totally preventable.
You know, we finally, in so many, the CDC, like you said, we're addressing that this is an epidemic, right? We have, of course, have a pandemic, but this is a literal epidemic. When we talk about, and the fact is, Brian, I really appreciate that you doing this work at this point in time, because I actually am starting to get involved a lot with healthcare system, with children and obesity, because I'm, you know, our pediatrician is a family friend, and she literally gets in tears when she sees her she's in tears looking at these kids coming through. So where do we start to help cycles to formulate? So, you know, your work working with adults, if we can help that, like, these are generational links to weight, right? The way we eat. It's such a communal, emotional based experience, but we have to start cutting some cords and figuring this out, like yesterday, but definitely today. We have got to do the work now. I mean,
I agree. And we got to make it that we're not shaming folks, and we got to make it that it's not overwhelming. Again, traditional diets are just too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, I made one change. When I got made my revelation, I'm going to run a marathon. I did two things. Number one, I started running. And that's a whole conversation. I mean, I failed because I didn't know how to become a runner. So I just went out and tried to run a little farther every day. And in a couple of weeks, I hurt myself because that's not the way to do it. So, but I started running. The other thing I made, and I don't promote this as far as a good thing, but again, at the time, I wasn't really into health. I was just looking to start furthering my goal of becoming a runner. But I only made one change dietarily, and that was going from regular soda to diet soda. Now, I know there's a lot of feelings about diet soda will cause you to gain more weight. I think that's kind of BS because, no, I think diet sodas are unhealthy, don't get me wrong. And I don't drink much soda at all anymore. But at the time, I cut out a lot of calories because I used to drink a soda with every meal. And you get to McDonald's and you get a supersized Coke, right? I mean, that supersized Coke has like 500 calories in it. So just by going from a supersized Coke to a supersized Diet Coke, I shed 500 calories, just making that one change. So I did that for a while, and I upped my running. I eventually got a runner's book, and I eventually learned how to run. And I love it so much now. I became a certified running coach. But those two things in combination, I lost 20 pounds over a period of not that much time, maybe 2 months. But it became a habit then. Me drinking diet soda became a habit. And running became a habit, right? So then I added something else. I did something else. I don't remember what my second thing was. It was in the eating phase. I think I stopped. Looking back on it, I think I stopped eating out like every lunch. That type of thing. I pack my lunch because packing a lunch, even if you have an unhealthy lunch, packing it is usually less calories than eating out, especially fast food, right? So, but my point in all this is we got to stop being overwhelmed. We got to sit down and have a strategic plan to go into things and do one thing at a time. And those one changes at a time over time become habits. When they become a habit, then you don't have to think about it anymore. It's like muscle memory, right?
Totally.
And now, I mean, I stopped losing weight in 2004. I haven't thought about losing weight other than, to get, I'd be careful that I'm being truthful here, because in 2004, the last 20 pounds I lost wasn't because I needed to lose weight. I was about 190 pounds, and at my height, 185, 190 pounds is perfectly healthy. But I wanted to try to qualify for Boston. I wanted to get faster in running. So I got down to 165 for running purposes. Now, obviously, we're humans, right? So we still have fluctuations in our weight. I'm still a very healthy weight. And if I want to train for a race, I might lose 5 pounds for the race. So I can't say I never try to lose weight for any reason, but I don't need to for health. I've maintained a healthy weight under the 190 pounds for 18 years now but the key is without thinking about it. I don't think about what I need to do unless I want to lose 5 pounds to get faster in my next 5K, that type of thing. But, I don't sit down today. Like, I'm not sitting down and going, oh boy, I can't eat this, I shouldn't eat that. I just have my routine, and I don't think about it anymore. It's just routine and habits.
I'm so glad you brought up habits, right? Because this is why I love coaching so much, because you do focus on one goal at a time that's just right so that you can put it in.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about. Plus, Brian, you brought up the point. Nobody's underestimating that soda's bad for you. But if you're going to have it, then modify. So this is what I think you and I are trying to help people to realize that, and this is what you do in your book so well, is it's a formula, right? You have this formula. So when you stay in that domain, you add some movement, whatever that looks like, because at 200 pounds, your movement's going to look different than when we ask you 60 days from now, what is that? What do you want your movement plan to look like?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. When I started, and to that point, when I started, and this plan's actually in the book, because I do believe that running is the best exercise for losing weight. And I can actually scientifically prove that. It's because running uses every muscle in the body. It gets us going. It gets our metabolism going. There's the afterburn because but when you go for a run, even now, when I go for a run, my heart rate is very low. My resting heart rate's about 45.
Wow.
And when I'm out running, I get in on a normal, just average jog, if you will, I get up to 120, 130 beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a healthy heart, I'm told, I'm not a doctor, but what I've researched and been told by cardiologists is that a healthy heart rate, if you're exercising at 130, in the first minute to 2 minutes, it should be down maybe around 90, right? But even about an hour later, my heart rate is at 60, right? It takes a couple hours for me to get back down to that 45 beats per minute. The reason I'm bringing this up is because during that time, my metabolism is also higher. During that cool down, at the very least, my heart's burning off more calories because it's beating faster, right? It's working a little harder than it normally does. And all that I mentioned is healthy. That's a healthy heart. That's what happens with our hearts. Our hearts don't go from working out for a half an hour at a high rate to resting heart rate in 5 minutes. It just doesn't. It takes time to come down. But that's what I call the afterburn, and so running does that more than lifting weights, because or some of the other exercises. You could throw swimming in there. Swimming is probably the second best as far as calories burned, but running does the best. And I'm not saying, I know not everybody can run. I get that. And if you can't run, there's other options, even walking, and there's always something that you can do exercise wise, movement wise. But when I started running, remember I made a comment that I couldn't even run across the street without it being a fatal event. Well, when I started running and doing it the right way, the plan was basically, and I'm not talking about speed. I believe that if you're moving your feet faster than you walk, then you're running.
Mm-hmm.
The technical definition of running is both feet comes off the ground. There's a period of a split millisecond or second where your both feet are off the ground. Whereas walking, like if you do speed walking, one foot's always contacting the ground at all time. That's the difference between speed walking and running. Now, people call it jogging if you're not going fast. I think that's no. If you're doing the movement of running, you're a runner and running.
Gotcha. I'm so glad that you're defining this, because I often think my pace is not, I'm more of a sprinter than a run, but the pace has always been something that I thought a jogger versus a runner. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? I think it's a pacing thing that everyone looks at. Oh, you're a runner if you go 5, you know what I'm saying? Versus,
right.
Yeah.
Right. The problem with the word jog, though, and jogging, is it's used in a derogatory manner. In that if you're going slow, people call you a jogger, and if you're going faster, people call you a runner, right? And then if you're a jogger, you wouldn't believe how many times, well, I've said this myself, but in later years when I stopped thinking this way, I hear this all the time. Well, I'm only jogging, I'm not running. No, I don't care if you're doing 20-minute per mile pace, right?
Yes.
If you're doing that movement, you're running, you're not jogging. When I started out, my pace was probably 14 minutes, right? My last marathon I ran was 8.5-minute miles. So, I mean, the paces are irrelevant for this discussion, really. Now, obviously, the faster you run, you can burn off more calories and stuff. So that's a conversation for another day. But anyways, what I would do was I would start running, again, very slowly. I could probably walk just as fast as I was running at that time, but I would run for a minute, walk for 2 minutes, run for a minute, walk for 2 minutes, and do that 7 times. And that was the first week. The second week was something like run for 2 minutes, walk for 2 minutes. You build it up that way. And over time, you get to then where you could, in like 12 weeks, I got to the point where I was running 20 minutes at a time. And again, it's this whole concept of bite-sized chunks.
Yes.
We got to be patient. We got to know that we didn't put weight on overnight. We're not going to lose it overnight. It's the same process to lose it as it is to put it on. It's exactly the same math. It's just a lot of people think it's more fun to put it on than it is to take it off. But it's the exact same math. It's the exact same science. It's the exact same everything. It's just going the opposite direction, right?
Totally.
So once we start thinking in that terms that, hey, this is something that is just, it's going to take time. Just like it took time to put it on, and we do one thing at a time, and we don't overwhelm ourselves. We can do things. Another thing is support, and this was a key for me in that I had in the year 2000, I was in the middle of my running journey. I still wasn't to the point of running marathons, but I was running 5Ks at the time. So it took me about a year and a half to really go from ground zero to running 5-10Ks in running. And that was a series of doing it wrong. Like I said before, I had injuries. Like I stubbed my toe against my bed and broke my toe. So I had some setbacks like that. But during that time, I did lose weight. I did build up running. But I got this job in the year 2000. I was a software engineer, and I got this job, and they had a running group at lunch. They had a shower there, and they had a running group at lunch. So I started running with these guys, and we pushed each other, not necessarily pushed each other in pace wise. That's not what I mean, but we pushed each other because we're all at all different levels. And like I had a goal. My goal was running a marathon, and some other people's goals were running a marathon too. So we could pick each other up when we didn't feel like going for a run. We're like, come on, let's get out the door. Let's go for a run together, right? Or if somebody had an injury, we had the support of somebody to help us through that, to not totally give up, and realize that we just got to work through the injury, work through it, and get back on track later, right? But support is very, very good. And we tend to all have a lot of negative support in our lives. Like I had, and again, I go through this in the book, but I didn't have the best family, supportive family. Like my mom actually said that I'm going to kill, well, it wasn't my mom, it was my aunt, but she told it through, I heard it through my mom that, I'm going to kill myself with doing all this running, because they thought my heart couldn't take all this running, which it's the total opposite of that. But, so, negatives, we tend to have plenty of negative support in our life, but we don't tend to have support towards our goals, but I think it's very important to seek out. And if your goal is to run a marathon, just using that as an example, right? You don't want to hang out with people who hate running. You don't look, I'm not saying don't hang out with them, but you don't look for support. You don't look for support from people in that area if they don't have an interest in that area, right?
Yes.
So again, in the weight loss thing is simple, but it's hard. And support is very critical to keep you going through. You need a strong why to keep you motivated. You need goals as far as destinations. You need like the pie in the sky goal, like for me was the marathon, but you also need the intermediate goals to keep you motivated to celebrate those successes. Totally. But you also need the support, because there's going to be days when you just don't feel like doing it. There's going to be days when you feel like giving up. There's going to be those days, and you need that support. You need to be able, call somebody or have a partner that's going to give you a kick in the pants to get out the door, or whatever it is, right? Pull that piece of apple pie with gobs of ice cream on top away from you or something. I don't know. But, but somebody that's going to support in a positive way and believe that you can achieve these goals, not just detract from it.
Absolutely. And And again, I appreciate the fact that you're bringing simplicity into this. It's already a very complex, I call it a problem, but really an issue, right? It's a really
Right.
complex issue. It has many layers. So, of course, you were talking about there is that emotional piece where finally look at all these programs that have come out like Noom and whatever. There's so many that are
Right.
saying this is a behavioral. Let's like really examine the holistic nature of this weight loss journey for you. And like your strong why. I really love the fact that you are saying you have the strong why. And why diets don't work, Brian. You've done most. I had done a majority of them. I don't know very many that I haven't approached. The problem is it does come back on. It comes with a vengeance as we
Hmm.
age, right? And especially as a woman, I'm noticing it is getting harder to lose it when it comes packs on because the hormonal changes, even for
Right.
men, even for men every decade, right? It gets
Right.
so we have to acknowledge the fact that this is for you're developing a wellness plan for longevity. Like I know we want to do it for this, like I want to look good in a bathing suit or I want to really be able, but that short term, it's almost like it's so complex, right? You have a short term, but you have to really look for the long haul too.
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, it's long-term health.
Bottom
That's
line.
and it's the habits. And I mean, that's it. If
I'm
you
here with
don't,
you. I gotta plug in my phone. You keep
oh, that's
talking.
okay. No, but if you don't look at it for the long haul, we're just gonna always be struggling, you
Yes.
know. And again, the long haul doesn't mean results don't happen quickly. Like I said, so many. I think a lot of people, and I know I did, right. And I talk from personal experience, but I think my personal experience is pretty common,
Hmm.
in that it seems so daunting and it seems so overwhelming. And you're just looking like, oh, I have to lose 100 pounds. I'm 320 pounds and my healthy weight's 195, right? And it's just like, I'm never going to get there. Well, we got to somehow stop that thinking, break ourselves out of that thinking, and realize that if I just make one change, I could lose 20 pounds in a couple months,
Totally.
or whatever, even a couple weeks. Everybody's different, right? And it's like, gotta do that. It's building up, building. It's like my house that I'm sitting in right now. We built a couple years ago, and we would come every week and see the progress, right? But the house took, from the time we bought it till we moved in, was 9 months.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, I mean, it wasn't like they just built the house. I bought the house, they built the house, and I moved in the next, like, 2 days later. And it's the same thing with losing weight, right? If we just make that one change, we'll see results. If we make another change, we'll see results. If we make another change, we'll see more results. And they keep building on top of one another, and eventually you'll get to the finished product. But so many people, I'll tell you another story. I was volunteering for a cancer society. I know cancer is near and dear to your heart,
Hmm.
and a cancer society. I forget the name of it. It was the group that Gilda Radner started, but it wasn't the Gilda Radner Foundation. It was I have a T-shirt. My brain sometimes doesn't work. Anyways, it was in Washington D.C. I volunteered with them to as part of a long distance multi-day. It's was it 200 miles? 200. I even forget the distance. I think it was 200-mile journey from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, through the countryside and ending up at the mall in Washington, D.C. And we had a team of 12, and basically there was two teams of six. And what we do was we just take turns running segments. Like I had three segments during it took us about 36 hours to do it. And I had three segments, and we just constantly run. Like somebody runs 5 miles, then somebody runs 10 miles, and somebody runs 15 miles, somebody runs 3 miles. We had it split up distance wise for all different fitness levels. And I did that with them, but we did training together before the event, and we had a coach. Now I wasn't the coach. I wasn't the coach, but I showed up before the coach, and I get there, and this was at my peak fitness level. And I get there, and the people that were already there were coming up to me and talking to me like I was the coach.
Mm.
And I'm not. And I told them I'm not. I'm just like you. I'm just here to participate. And they're like, oh, but you just look like the coach, right? And I appreciate that. But, then we started talking about, because these guys were just beginning running and stuff, and we were just going to help them train, and, they were like, oh, saying stuff like, as I was listening to their stories, they were like, well, you don't understand because you're a natural athlete and stuff like that, right? And it's like a frustrating thing to me is that people look at the final product and they say, oh, you're a natural this, you're natural that, whatever, right? But they don't realize the work that goes into getting to that point,
Absolutely.
right? And it's like, now at that time, I'm not just talking weight loss now. At that time, I was running marathons and I was trying to be competitive against myself, not against anybody else. But I was, at the peak of my fitness. So this goes beyond just weight loss. But my point is, though, that we in our society, we just want to skip to the final result. And we need to take a step back and realize that there is no magic pill. There is no get rich quick process, especially with weight loss, right? There's nothing you can do that you can go to bed at night and wake up 100 pounds later in the morning. I mean, even if you have bariatric surgery, there's still more to it to lose weight than just have the surgery, right? I mean, that limits how much you can eat to a certain extent. But I know plenty of people that have had the surgery, and while they're not, to the point where they're going to literally die, they're still obese, right? Because there's still more to it than just having the surgery. And I'm not bashing the surgery either. That's not my point. But my point is, again, that one step at a time, celebrate successes. You can go as far as you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian, so much for being on. And everybody, check out this Diet Rebel. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Artie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You too.